CEO witnesses heartbreaking beating his incredible life-changing action for the child revealed. Jacob Davis stepped out of the factory, his heart already sinking under the weight of the day's labor. As he walked home through the fading sunlight, eager to embrace his loving wife and two spirited kids, fate had a different plan. He turned a corner and froze. A group of privileged kids, their laughter like nails on a chalkboard, were tormenting a small boy on the ground, fists raining down mercilessly. Jacob's stomach twisted into knots. The boy was no older than his son, a victim of cruel laughter and arrogance. Every ounce of exhaustion vanished. Fear buzzed in his chest as he took a shaky breath, but what stirred most was indignation. He couldn't stand by while this injustice played out. He stepped into the fray, words rallying in his chest like thunder. "Hey! Cut it out!" The bullies paused, their laughter faltering, replaced by loathing glares. Jacob felt that moment swell a man standing against a tide of privilege for the sake of a child. The weight of fear clashed with the fire of courage. "Who do you think you are?" sneered one of the older kids, but Jacob stood firm. He felt the rushing adrenaline, the tight grip of reality around his heart. The world around him blurred, focusing only on the child who needed help. This was no longer just about him, this was about standing up for what's right. The situation spiraled into a whirlwind. News of Jacob's bold intervention spread through town like wildfire. Conversations erupted at coffee shops, dinner tables, everywhere people gathered. People rallied behind him. "That's right, Jacob," they would say, pride swelling in their voices. But as support grew from the working-class residents, so did backlash from the affluent families who felt threatened. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Days turned into weeks. As Jacob faced the growing division, his family bore the brunt of the fallout. The echo of heated debates came home, shadows creeping into their once joyful evenings. But what shook the very foundations of the town was the reflection of a wealthy CEO, who had observed the rising tensions and the disparity with a newfound awareness. The contrasting lives, his lavish lifestyle juxtaposed against Jacob's humble existence, began to gnaw at his conscience. The town hall meeting loomed on the horizon, a potential flashpoint. Would they heal or divide? Jacob felt the weight of choices, risks swirling in his mind like a tempest. Standing up for justice had stirred a storm he couldn't contain, and he grappled with the consequences on his family. As the community prepared to face each other, a question hung heavy: would they unite for a just cause, or would silence prevail? Jacob's heart raced with uncertainty, knowing the outcome could reshape their lives forever. Jacob's hands shook as he sat at the warm kitchen table, the familiar scent of his wife's cooking wafting in the air, yet it felt foreign. Sophia looked at him with concern, her dark eyes searching for clarity amidst the storm swirling in his mind. Their children played in the next room, the sounds of laughter a stark contrast to the tension that hung heavy in the air. "What's really going on, Jake?" Sophia's voice was gentle but firm, cutting through his thoughts like a beacon in the fog. Jacob wanted to tell her everything, to spill the emotions that churned inside him, but the words caught in his throat. I worry about the kids," he finally managed. "What kind of world are they growing up in?" His voice was thick with emotion, heavy with the weight of recent events. Sophia reached out and took his hand, her warmth grounding him. "You did the right thing. You stood up for that boy. That's what matters." But doubt gnawed at him. Headlines had splashed across the local paper, embellishing his actions. Hero or troublemaker? They asked. The support had been overwhelming from some, but whispers from others, especially those with power, felt like judgment looming over him. What started as a fight for justice was beginning to feel isolating, like a chasm had opened between him and the life he once knew. As he sat there, lost in thoughts of consequences, a sudden realization hit him. The town hall meeting wasn't just a chance to voice concerns, it was an opportunity to bridge gaps. If he could rally the community around this issue, maybe they could find a way to heal. Maybe they could show the children, his children, that standing up for one another meant something. What if we turned this into something bigger? He suggested, excitement creeping back into his voice. What if we propose a community forum at the town hall? A safe space to discuss these issues, build understanding. Sophia smiled, a flicker of hope igniting in her eyes. That's a fantastic idea. People need to talk. They need to hear each other. But as the light returned briefly, doubts crept in again. Would the affluent families listen? Would the CEO who had witnessed the whole scene use his influence for positive change or to silence the voices like his? As Jacob contemplated this, the clock on the wall ticked ominously towards the meeting, each second echoing in his mind. What if he was making things worse? What if he lost everyone he cared about in the process? The night before the meeting, Jacob lay in bed, the weight of anticipation pressing against his chest. He glanced at Sophia, asleep beside him, blissfully unaware of the turmoil brewing in his heart. Suddenly, there was a knock at the front door, sharp and unexpected, shattering the stillness of the night. The darkness cloaked whatever lay outside, and his heart raced. Who could it be at this hour? Jacob pulled on a shirt and went to answer. As the door swung open, he was met by a figure standing in the shadows, a flash of familiar features barely illuminated by the porch light. It was the CEO, the man whose conscience had begun to stir. Jacob, the man's voice was a mixture of urgency and resolve. We need to talk. The air between them crackled with unspoken possibilities, leaving Jacob with a multitude of questions. What was going to happen next? Would this be the turning point he hoped for, or would it lead to an even greater conflict? Jacob swallowed hard, feeling the weight of the CEO's words wash over him. The man's presence, both intimidating and compelling, stirred a mix of fear and hope inside him. Jacob stepped aside, gesturing for him to come in. "Let us talk inside," he said, trying to mask the tremor in his voice. The CEO hesitated for a moment, peering into the house as if it held the answers to questions he hadn't fully articulated. Finally, he stepped over the threshold, and the door clicked shut behind them, sealing away the cold night air. Jacob gestured toward the kitchen table, the same one where he and Sophia often shared meals and laughter. The scent of dinner now cold lingered faintly in the background. It's late," Jacob began awkwardly. "But I guess it couldn't wait." "Honestly, it can't." The CEO rubbed the back of his neck, clearly uncomfortable. "I've thought a lot about what happened. I've been standing on the sidelines, but I'm tired of just watching." Jacob frowned. "Watching? You were there. You could have stopped it." "Exactly," he replied, his voice tight with pent-up frustration. "And I should have. But I didn't. And that kid is just one of many. Maybe I'm just another rich guy who thinks he can throw money at problems instead of getting involved." "People need to hear this," Jacob urged, passion igniting in his chest. "They need someone who can stand up and say we can do better. We can create a community that fights for each other." The CEO nodded, a flicker of newfound purpose lighting his eyes. "I can help. I need to. But I don't know how." Jacob's heart quickened. Perhaps they were indeed on the brink of something transformative. "We'll figure it out together. At the town hall, we can present a united front. We can invite the community to share their stories, their struggles." The tension in the room shifted slightly. "But who will come?" the CEO asked, doubt creeping back into his voice. "Will those families really show up? The ones who think these issues don't touch them?" "They have to," Jacob said firmly, desperation edging his words. "We'll explain that these are not just kids in trouble. This is about all of us. We're all in this together. Silence settled heavily, both men lost in their thoughts. A moment later, Jacob looked directly at the CEO. You could be the face of change, you know. You have power and people will listen. But the CEO shook his head slowly. Power can be a double-edged sword, Jacob. What if they turn against you? Against us? What if? Before he could finish, Jacob interjected. What if they don't? We can't let fear dictate our actions anymore. If we stand together, maybe we can shift the narrative in this town. For our children. The CEO sighed, the weight of choices settling in the air between them. All right, let us do it, he finally said, the determination in his voice echoing with their shared resolve. Let us make that meeting count. They spoke long into the night, weaving their plans and ideas, encouraged by the flickering light of camaraderie. As they wrapped up, the first hints of sunrise peeked through the curtains, painting the kitchen in warm hues. Jacob felt a swell of hope, a notion that change could be born from shared vulnerability. Yet, along with the budding excitement came a shadow of doubt. Are you sure you can commit to this? He asked, concern clouding his features. The CEO nodded, though uncertainty lingered behind his eyes. Just as Jacob opened his mouth to express his gratitude, another sharp knock echoed through the quiet morning, a sound both unexpected and foreboding. What now? Jacob whispered, heart racing again. The CEO paled. I have a feeling this wasn't just a friendly visit. As they exchanged anxious glances, the door creaked open slightly, revealing a figure on the threshold, someone whose presence could very well change everything they were planning. Jacob, the voice floated into the room, cutting through the delicate morning light like a knife. You need to hear this. Jacob's heart skipped. He turned to the door, uncertainty tightening his chest. Who was this person, and what could they possibly want at this hour? The voice, heavy with urgency, belonged to Sarah, a member of the local support network, the very community they hoped to uplift. Sarah? Jacob said, disbelief lacing his tone. What is going on? Her eyes were wide, raw with emotion. It's about Ethan. He's in trouble, really serious trouble. They found him. Jacob's stomach twisted. Ethan was one of the kids they'd been trying to protect, one who had the potential to turn his life around if given the right support. The CEO stepped closer, sensing the urgency in the air. What do you mean, trouble? He asked, his voice suddenly serious. They found him behind the old factory, she managed, stifling a sob. A couple of the boys from the school were there, and it escalated. A shaky breath escaped her. He was beaten up pretty badly. They didn't get to him. Thank God. But we need to do something before it's too late. Jacob felt the blood drain from his face. His thoughts raced. We have to go to him. He needs us now more than ever. What if this keeps happening? Yes, the CEO said, his voice firming up, his earlier doubts evaporating. We can't stand by. We need to act now. They rushed to follow Sarah out of the house, the chill of the morning air hitting them like a wake-up call. The urgency of their mission thrust Jacob forward, heart pounding with fear and the weight of responsibility. What if Ethan didn't survive this? What if this was just the tip of the iceberg? They arrived at the site, a grim reminder of decay. The factory loomed against the dawn, shadows stretching across the pavement. A small gathering of children huddled together, their faces drawn and frightened. Jacob's heart broke at the sight. This was not just about Ethan, it was about each one of them. Is he here? Jacob asked, searching the crowd. Sarah nodded, motioning to the far side of the building. He was taken to the hospital, but they're waiting for word before letting anyone in. Jacob felt a surge of anger and sorrow. We want to help. We don't know how, but we can't let this keep happening. Not to him, not to anyone else. He looked at the CEO, who appeared equally affected by the moment. Jacob suddenly understood the reality weighed heavier than his own personal struggles. This was about real lives, about change they could affect right now. "Let us get these kids together," the CEO declared. "We'll organize a meeting later today. They can safely share what is happening, and we can figure out a solid plan." The kids murmured, fear still clutching at their small frames. "But who will listen?" a boy asked, his voice trembling. The CEO knelt to their level, determination etched on his face. "We will listen. And we'll make sure everyone knows what is happening. You're not alone in this. None of you are." But doubts lingered in the air like the fog around them. Would they really be able to rally the community? Would anyone respond to the call? What if it just fell flat again, leaving Ethan with no chance? As Jacob looked into the eyes of those kids, hope and despair swirled within him. They were on the brink of something monumental, but the outcome hinged on their next move. Could they spark the change they so desperately needed? "Together, we'll find a way," he said aloud, though a flicker of doubt threaded his heart. The reality of his words felt both powerful and fragile, and just as they began discussing next steps, a familiar voice echoed in Jacob's mind. "You need to hear this, but what if this time it was too late? Would he truly be able to make a difference after all?" He took a breath, every fiber of his being urging him forward. This was only the beginning if they could only hold on just a little longer. Jacob felt the weight of fear in the air, a tangible thing wrapping around their small gathering. He looked at the frightened faces of the kids, the questions swirling in his mind almost as suffocating as the morning fog. He wanted to say something reassuring, to give them hope, but he wasn't sure what would come out. Instead, he decided to act. "Let us draw everyone together at the park," he said. "It's a safe place, and we can talk about what happened. We can find a way to voice what you all are feeling." The kids nodded, some glancing at each other, unsure but desperate for a solution. Slowly, they formed a small line behind Jacob and the CEO, their small footsteps echoing against the pavement as they walked toward the park. With each step, Jacob could feel the knot in his stomach tighten. He couldn't shake the fear of what would happen next. What if Ethan didn't make it? What if speaking out only made things worse? He had no answers, just a growing resolve that clung to him like the bitter cold. As they reached the park, a few benches formed a natural circle, perfect for gathering. The early morning sun crept over the horizon, bathing them in a soft light. With a deep breath, Jacob gestured for the kids to sit. He realized that even if he found the right words, none of it would matter unless they believed it too. "I know you all are scared," he began, his voice steady but soft. "What happened to Ethan wasn't just unfair, it was wrong. You deserve to feel safe and heard. But we can't do this alone. We need to stick together." A small girl named Mia raised her hand, hesitantly breaking the silence. "What if they come back? What if they hurt us like they hurt Ethan?" A shiver ran down Jacob's spine. He could feel the truth of her words settling among them like a lead weight. "We'll make sure that doesn't happen," he said, looking into her bright, frightened eyes. "But we need to take a stand. We need to show them we will protect each other." Just as a flicker of determination began to spark in the kid's eyes, he noticed Sarah at the edge of the park, talking quietly into her phone. Her expression was grave. What could she possibly have to say that added to the tension? Minutes later, she walked over, her demeanor even more urgent. "I just got off the line with Ethan's mom," she said, drawing everyone's attention. The kids straightened, their eyes wide. "They don't have good news. He's in surgery right now, and the doctors are worried they won't be able to fix all the damage." A collective gasp filled the air. Jacob felt the air leave his lungs, the reality of it crashing down upon him like a heavy wave. He squeezed his eyes shut for a moment, trying to gather himself. This was not how things were supposed to go. This was not the fight he had envisioned. "We have to do something," he said, his voice rough but full of grit. "We can't let this happen again, not to Ethan, and not to any of you. You deserve better. We need to get the community involved. Rally everyone for a protest. We'll take it to the streets, let them see us. A murmur went through the kids, a mixture of fear and resolve. Jacob watched as their expressions shifted, disbelief giving way to a burgeoning spark of hope. But in the midst of their planning, Jacob felt a heavy weight of uncertainty. Would the community hear them? Would they really have the courage to show up? And if this did fall apart, what would that say about their dreams of change? As they began to organize their thoughts and voices, Jacob caught sight of the first police car driving by, the blue lights cutting through their moment of unity. His stomach turned. What if they were already too late? And what would the repercussions be? It was clear that this battle was just beginning. Jacob stood in the park, the tension radiating off the kids like heat from the asphalt beneath them. The morning sun was growing brighter, yet a shadow of dread hung in the air. He felt the urgency push at him, they couldn't delay any longer. Okay, everyone. He said, clapping his hands to grab their attention. Let us think about what we want to say. We need to make our message clear. Mia bit her lip, uncertainty clouded her eyes. What if it doesn't work? What if no one cares? He stepped closer to her, kneeling down to meet her gaze. That's why this is so important, Jacob replied, his heart thundering in his chest. We need to show them how much we care. If we stay quiet, nothing changes. But together, we can make a difference. We can make them listen. Around him, he saw nods, hesitant yet hopeful. The kids were starting to rally, igniting small sparks of courage within each other. Sarah stood nearby, visibly torn between managing the logistics of their protest and her concern for Ethan. Do you really think people will join us? She asked, anxiety lacing her tone. I have to believe they will, Jacob said, standing tall again. If we can find a way to connect with their heart, no one will ignore us. We just need to reach out. As the kids began brainstorming slogans, Jacob's phone buzzed. It was a message from Ethan's mom. His heart sank when he read it. Ethan was stable but in critical condition. The road to recovery would be long, uncertain. He looked up to see the kids clutching their drawings and hastily made protest signs. One boy had a piece of cardboard with a simple message, "We are not afraid." Jacob's throat tightened. That should have been encouraging, but right now, it felt like a fragile dream hanging by a thread. Everyone let us get on our feet, Jacob instructed, rallying them. The sun climbed higher, casting slivers of warmth amid their cold fear. Let us practice our chants and get used to being loud together. When we step out as a family. Together. They echoed, their voices growing stronger. With each chant, Jacob felt his confidence swell, a primal urge to protect, to fight for change. They spent the next hour sharpening their words into pointed arrows and weaving them into the fabric of their message. Laughter occasionally bubbled up, reminding them of the joy they craved back in their lives. When the final piece came together, a large banner reading "Ethan needs us, we need change," Jacob felt adrenaline coursing through him. But just as they felt ready, another police car cruised by, stopping briefly. Jacob's heart raced, adrenaline spiking. He was certain they were waiting for a reason, ready to put a stop to their gathering. Next, he noticed some concerned parents hovering around the edges of the park, debating whether to step in. Do we have permission to protest? One mother called out, her voice edged with worry. Jacob squared his shoulders, drawing on all the courage he could find. We don't need permission to stand up for what's right. A heavy silence hung among the crowd, punctuated only by the distant sound of sirens. Watching the worried faces of the parents and the uncertainty hanging over the kids, Jacob felt the familiar flicker of doubt creep in. Could they really pull this off? Would they be ready for what came next? It was now or never, and that thought became a mantra. But was his hope enough to inspire the community to unite? He glanced back at the kids, their hopeful expressions igniting a flame within him. Together, they could face anything, couldn't they? Just then, a movement caught his eye near the park's entrance. A group was gathering, people he didn't recognize, but they wore determined faces. What did they want? Jacob's breath hitched. Were they friends or foes? The moment swelled with promise and dread. What lay ahead felt monumental, and the real fight was just beginning. The murmur of the crowd swelled as the unfamiliar faces moved closer. Jacob's heart raced. He could feel the tension tightening around him like a noose. He spotted a woman in the front, her dark hair pulled back in a tight bun, her expression fierce and focused. It was hard to tell if she was there to support or oppose them. "Stay calm," Jacob said, raising a hand to quiet the kids. Their eyes darted to him, searching for reassurance. "Let us see what they want." The woman stepped forward, her voice strong and clear. "We heard about what happened with Ethan. We want to help." Behind her, others nodded and murmured their agreement. Relief washed over Jacob, but it was tinged with skepticism. "What do you mean by help?" "We're community members, parents, teachers, and advocates. We want to stand alongside you." "We believe in what you're doing," she replied, her resolve palpable. With each word, the kids' faces brightened. They were no longer alone. They had support. Jacob felt the weight lift slightly from his shoulders. The crowd behind the woman grew, their faces lit with solidarity. "We're tired of the silence." Someone shouted from the group, echoing their shared frustration. The kids cheered, the momentum shifting in their favor. "We can make banners. Write letters. Even organize a community meeting." One of the new supporters shouted. Another chimed in, "We can share Ethan's story far and wide. More people need to know." Joy bubbled among the kids as they rallied together, each suggestion igniting sparks of new ideas. Jacob felt his chest swell, not just with hope but with the promise of real change. "Together, we can make a noise that no one can ignore," he declared, heart hammering in his chest. But he knew they had to tread carefully. Unity was powerful, but so was the responsibility that came with it. Just then, Sarah tugged at his sleeve, concern painted across her face. "But what if people get angry? What if it gets too loud?" He crouched beside her, his voice steady. "Then we stay peaceful. We show them the power of our words. That's our strength. We're fighting for Ethan, for the future." The crowd gathered tighter, voices melding into a harmonious blend of determination and fear. The sun felt warmer now, illuminating not just their banners but also the hope swelling in their hearts. As the meeting evolved into a whirlwind of enthusiasm and brainstorming, Jacob felt a swell of determination. This was more than a protest, it was a movement. But as the clamor of support echoed around him, Jacob suddenly spotted a familiar figure lingering at the edge of the park. Ethan's dad. The look on his face told a story that twisted Jacob's gut. A mix of worry and deep sadness hung around him like a heavy fog. "Ethan's dad is here," Jacob murmured to Sarah, his voice barely above a whisper. "He may not want us to move forward with urgency." Jacob approached the grieving man. "Sir, we're doing this for Ethan. We want to make sure this doesn't happen again." Ethan's dad shifted uneasily, his eyes clouded with grief and anger. "I know, but sometimes, this just makes it worse. It attracts attention, but what if it's the wrong kind?" Jacob's heart thudded wildly. He had believed that this was the right path. Now doubt gnawed at his resolve. Was this fight truly what Ethan needed? Gathering his courage, he met the father's gaze squarely. "We can't let fear win. We need to make his story heard. Can we count on your support?" A heavy silence embraced them, thick with the weight of choices. As he waited for his answer, Jacob felt all eyes on him, the fate of their mission resting on this moment. Would they stand together, or would they falter? What would Ethan's dad say next? Ethan's dad seemed to shrink beneath the overwhelming weight of their expectations. The tension hung in the air like a storm cloud, crackling with uncertainty. "I don't know," he finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know if it's right to bring all this attention. It's too painful. I wish I could just take it back, just have him here." The raw anguish in his voice sliced through the crowd. Seeing Ethan's dad struggle unmoored something deep inside Jacob. He understood the fear what it meant to open their wounds for the world to see. But he also knew they couldn't allow fear to silence Ethan's story. Jacob took a breath, steadying himself. "We're not just making noise, sir. We're giving a voice to Ethan and so many others who have suffered in silence. We're showing that his life mattered." A ripple of agitation coursed through the gathered crowd. They sensed the pivotal moment. With every passing second, he could feel their energy shifting from apprehension to defiance. But Ethan's father's brow remained furrowed, conflicted. "I appreciate what you all want to do," he said, glancing at the sea of hopeful faces around him. "But I don't want to make things worse. I can't bear the thought of Ethan being out there in a way that doesn't honor him." Jacob felt the urgency of the moment. What if we honored him? What if we celebrated his life instead of letting fear control us? We can share his laughter, his dreams, everything he would be wanted. What if we started there? Silence followed, as the words hung in the air, heavy yet hopeful. One of the teenagers stepped forward, her brave voice breaking the stillness. Ethan was incredible. He loved skateboarding and making terrible jokes. Let us honor him like that. Let us share laughter in his name. Jacob caught the spark in Ethan's dad's eyes. Just for a moment, he looked like a man who could remember his son without the chains of grief weighing him down. "Do you really think that could work?" "I know it can," Jacob responded, conviction ringing in his voice. "Together, we can create a space for healing, a space where we share the good. We can all show what it means to stand together. And we can do it for Ethan." Slowly, the father nodded. It was a small gesture, but it felt monumental. The crowd held its breath, waiting. "All right. I'll help. For Ethan," he said, his voice fading but resolute. "I still need to think this through, but you're right. We can't let him be forgotten." A surge of energy rushed through Jacob. Cheers erupted from the kids behind him, their voices rang out clearer than ever. They could bring Ethan's story to life, transforming their grief into a rallying cry for change. The woman who had first spoken stepped forward again, her eyes shining. "We can plan a community gathering, a celebration of life. Together, we'll ensure Ethan is remembered in the best way possible. We won't just fight, we will shine a light on everything he meant to us." The kids began to buzz with ideas, colorful banners, shared laughter, stories told in gentle tones. Jacob watched as Ethan's dad came alive in front of them. It felt like a kind of rebirth amidst the sorrow, but even with the warmth of hope surrounding them, Jacob couldn't shake the anxiety unfurling in his gut. As they began to plan, a sense of urgency hung over him like a dark cloud. Was this just a temporary escape from the harsh realities of what had happened? He felt a chill run down his spine, a whisper of doubt creeping back in. With a newfound intensity, Jacob scanned the crowd, his heart pounding once more. A vision had ignited before him, but the path ahead still felt fraught. "What if we reach out to the school board, too?" he proposed, just as a scream cut through the air nearby, shattering their moment of hope. "Look!" someone shouted, pointing towards the entrance of the park where a group of angry parents had gathered, faces twisted with rage. What had they walked into? Jacob wondered as fear surged back. Was this the beginning or the end of their fight? The air thickened with tension as Jacob's eyes zeroed in on the group advancing toward them. The parents were a mix of fear and fury, a storm of emotions bubbling just beneath the surface. Jacob's heart raced. Were they there to support them or to lash out? Do they even know what we're trying to do? Jacob muttered under his breath, gripping the edge of the podium for support. He could hear their rising voices, each accusation more venomous than the last. "This isn't the time," one father shouted, shaking his fist. "You think you can just parade around, making a spectacle of this? It dishonors Ethan's legacy." Jacob's stomach twisted. He turned to Ethan's dad, who looked both vulnerable and enraged. "Let me handle this," Jacob said softly, though he didn't feel quite ready. His voice, however, had the clarity of purpose, now a beacon amidst the chaos. Taking a step forward, he raised his hands. Wait. Please just hear me out. The crowd quieted just slightly, drawn to his earnestness. Ethan's story matters. Not just to us, this community needs to hear his name. Somehow, amidst the anger, he found the strength to continue. We can't bury his memory in silence. We come together today not as different sides, but as people who loved him. The parents exchanged looks, some shifting uncomfortably. Jacob caught sight of a woman in the back, tears streaming down her face. What if we could come together instead of tearing each other apart? He urged, feeling the weight of every word. What is it going to take to make you understand? Another shouted back, voice full of hurt. You think your gathering will change anything? This isn't some photo op. No, Jacob replied, leaning into the fight. It's not. It's about honoring a boy who meant something to all of us. It's about turning our pain into something powerful. We each carry pieces of Ethan, and together, we can create something beautiful. For a moment, silence reigned. Jacob's heart thumped loudly in his chest, the collective stillness echoing like an unspent breath. A mother stepped forward, her expression softening. But what does that even look like? Jacob felt the opening, the fragility of hope shining through the chasms of grief. A gathering, he proposed, gazing earnestly at her, where we can share stories, laughter, lessons learned from him. A space where we can all heal together. The crowd's tension seemed to ebb. Jacob could see something in the parents' expressions, a flicker of curiosity mingling with sorrow. Maybe, just maybe, they weren't so far apart after all. But what if it backfires? Another voice piped up from the back. What if it causes more pain? We won't know unless we try, Ethan's dad finally said, stepping into the light, his voice steadier than before. I feared this, yes. But I also know that Ethan wouldn't want us to hide. He would want us to laugh, even through the tears, to remember the way he lived. The murmurs began to soften, the anger replaced by hesitant curiosity. Jacob felt a sense of relief wash over him, though shadows still lingered at the edges. What if we invite Ethan's friends too? He suggested, emboldened by Ethan's dad's words. Let us create a safe space for everyone to share, where our voices can overlap and mingle into something greater. As Jacob looked around, the fierce minds in the crowd began to shift. Hesitant nods followed. All right, one father conceded, wiping at his eyes. Let us try it then. But only if we can keep it respectful. One by one, the parents began to agree. A small victory, yet it felt monumental. Jacob could sense the tide turning. They were beginning to see that sorrow didn't have to breed anger or division, and a small spark ignited amongst them a flicker of possibility. But just as renewed determination began to pulse through the group, a scream echoed from beyond the park's perimeter. Jacob turned sharply, dread curling in his stomach. Someone's in trouble. He shouted, instinctively moving toward the sound, heart sinking at the thought of more chaos unfolding. What now? Jacob wondered, wondering if they could handle any more and what the cost might be. Would their fragile unity hold against an outside threat? Jacob's heart pounded as he sprinted toward the source of the commotion. Fear gnawed at him, the echoes of recent events crashing over him like a storm. The voices of the children and parents fell silent behind him. What if this time, he couldn't be the protector? As he rounded the corner, he found a scene that made him freeze. A group of boys hovered over a smaller child, their aggression palpable. The sight sent a bolt of fury through him. Hey! Jacob shouted, stepping forward. The bullies paused, surprise momentarily casting confusion over their faces. The small child was Ethan's friend, his eyes wide in terror. Jacob remembered Ethan, how full of life he was, and it stirred something fierce within him. He couldn't let this cycle of violence continue. You need to back off. He bellowed, channeling every bit of fire he could muster. This time, he felt the whole community behind him, dozens of eyes watching, waiting. The lead bully scowled, clearly caught off guard by Jacob's sudden appearance. "Why do you care? It's just a freak." The other kids behind him snickered, but they weren't as steady now. "Because no one should ever feel this way." Jacob snapped back, taking one step forward after another. Something changed in the air. He could sense the onlookers shifting, their collective breath held tight. In that crucial moment, Sarah stepped up, confidence shimmering through her voice. "You're wrong. He's brave, and you're nothing but a coward." The new wave of unity among the supporters surged like electricity, gathering strength. The bullies faltered, glancing back and forth between each other, unsure. Suddenly, from the crowd emerged Ethan's dad, his expression a fierce mixture of sadness and defiance. "Stop this. You think you're strong because you intimidate others? Real strength is standing up for each other." With that powerful statement, the tide turned. Jacob stepped closer, his heart hammering in rhythm with his awakening bravery. He locked eyes with the smallest boy on the ground. "Look at me," he said softly, crouching before him. "You're not alone. Ever. We're here. We're always going to stand up for each other." The boy nodded, tears pooling in his eyes, but courage blossomed there too. The lead bully's bravado shattered. With a stuttered apology, he backed away, tugging his friends along. The air shifted, they disappeared into the distance, the remaining children cheering at the empowerment unfolding in their midst. Pride surged in Jacob. Voices erupted from the crowd, parents and kids alike absorbed in the magic of solidarity. The fear that had been wrapped tightly around their hearts began to unravel, unveiling the hope that lay dormant. As the realization dawned, Jacob knew this was about more than just one skirmish. The moment echoed louder. The power of community was alive. As if beckoning, laughter floated across the park. Children high-fived, carrying sparks of bravery, while the adults witnessed a transformation. A change was possible. Later that week, the gathering in Ethan's honor unfolded beautifully. The park was filled with smiling faces, laughter, and colors. They shared stories, a tapestry of hearts knitted together in remembrance of Ethan. His dad stood by Jacob's side, gratitude pouring through him as he saw how much love surrounded them. "We did this together, didn't we?" he murmured, his heart still processing the outpouring of support. "Yes," Jacob replied, his voice steady. "Ethan's legacy will live on because we showed up." As night fell and lanterns twinkled overhead, Jacob reflected. He had entered the journey barely able to breathe for fear, and now he felt alive with purpose. Their community had transformed not just through words but through actions, compassion, and unity. "Don't forget," he said to the gathering crowd, emotion washing over him, "together is the only way we'll move forward. For Ethan. For each other." Cheers erupted, voices swirling in a beautiful crescendo of hope. This is the moment to show your support. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive stories. Leave a like now, to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and feelings about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. You need to subscribe now. Don't wait not even one more second to share. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.